Welcome to this video, friends. In this one, we're going to learn about views. So, creating views with scripts. A view basically is an object. You create it and you save it. And instead of, for example, using a table, you can use a view. So, for example, if you want people who are not very good at programming or something like that, and you want to control their access to database tables, then you can give them views instead. Okay? Let's take a look here. I'm going to type the following. I'm going to use AdventureWorks, but first let me just enlarge the code view by about 20%. All right, so I'm going to type use AdventureWorks. And again, I'm going to, along the way, obviously show you quite a few different things. So this is nothing new, but imagine you want to check whether an object already exists. And if it does exist, then, for example, you want to get rid of it in some fashion, okay? So to do that, you can type stuff like this. You can say if, and then object ID. And notice this shows up here. Object ID. Built-in function, so you can select it. And then here you can put between single quotes, for example, employee details. All right, so I'm showing you something new here. How to drop objects. In other words, you first detect whether it exists or not with the if. And if it exists, by saying, for example, is not null. So if that is not null, that means it exists. That means you should get rid of it potentially because you want to recreate it or something like that, okay? So I'm going to say here, drop and then view employee details. All right, let's take a look here. So I'm just going to highlight this, give it a go, execute. And it says command completed successfully. That means I had an actual view named employee details already saved. And remember that if you look at AdventureWorks 2014, notice that the views folder is not under the tables folder. That's considered obviously something major. Expand that node for a second and you see all of these views here. All right, so keep that in mind. It's not under the tables folder. So let's take a look at the next stage in the process. So first, all I'm doing is detecting whether the view exists. Obviously, it could be other things, not just a view. But if it does exist, we get rid of it. And now we continue. So I will say as follows here. I'll say create view, employee details, like that. And then as. And at this stage, you can be as creative as you want, essentially. So what I'm going to say is this. Take a look. I'm going to type select hire date. And I'm going to be using the human resources dot employee table. So let's take a look at that before we do anything else so you have some sense of where things are coming from. Take a look. So select star from human resources dot employee. Let's take a look inside that. Never mind the red underlining, it's not important. Hit execute. And that is what we have inside this table. So let's take a look. We have job titles, birth dates, marital status, gender, hire date, vacation hours, sick leave hours. All right, all kinds of stuff. So for example, notice we have this hire date field. What we're going to do is basically create a view that shows how many years a person has worked. Okay? And then also whether the person qualifies for some kind of bonus or not. Obviously, how we choose to define a bonus depends on our company, but maybe say if somebody has worked for us for 8 years or more, then the person will qualify for a bonus. Or maybe 10 years or maybe 5 years. It all depends, obviously. Or maybe the person has sold a certain amount of money and the person qualifies for a bonus. Those are the kinds of questions you ask. All right, so over here, remember it says incorrect syntax, create view must be the only statement in the batch. We know how to fix that by now. You put the go down below. Separate everything into nice batches. All right, and as defined the view. So first I'm going to say now select hire date from human resources that employee. So I'm choosing the one column from the employee table in the human resources schema. Okay, I hope you've got that. And again, hover your mouse over this, and again it says must be the only statement in the batch. So I'm going to put a go right before it, and that gets rid of it. So one more time, take a look. If down below I type to select star, right, and I remove that go, it also gets underlined red, you see? So both of the goals, as you see, are necessary. Again, let me remove that one. Let me just double check. and it gets underlined red. There you go. So everything is checkable. That's good. At first, all we are going to do is show the hire date. That's easy. At the next stage, though, we're going to do something a little more sophisticated. Take a look. I would also like to know whether somebody qualifies for a bonus. So I'm going to say this between double quotes, bonus, and then I'm going to do a whole pretty sophisticated inline calculation that takes this form, equals, and then I'm going to use the case and when and then, if you remember back to those, okay? So take a look. I'm going to say this. I'm going to say case when, and I want to decide whether the person has worked, for example, for us for 8 years or more. How can I go about that? I can use the date diff function, the date difference function. I'm going to say date and then date diff. And the first quantity that you specify is whether you want the difference between two dates in years or in some other format. So I'm going to put year for years. Okay, I want the value calculated between today, for example, and the person's hire date to be shown to me in the number of years and not, for example, in some other format like number of days. Okay, take a look at here. You might have other options. Keep that in mind. Or day, you see that? All right, so I'm going to go with year. And then after that, at the next stage, the next quantity that you enter is the starting date. So that is the hire date. And after that, the next quantity that you enter is the stopping date. So that is today. And to make this dynamic, you don't want to hard code it to a specific day. Dynamic flexible means use functions instead that detect the current day. So say get date. So remember what this is saying in simple English, that you're going to calculate the difference in years between the hire date and today. That's it. That's how you think of it in simple English. You could do that on a piece of paper, correct? This is doing the same thing. All right, and I'm going to arbitrarily decide that if that is more than 8 or equal to it, the person will get a bonus. That's all. That's arbitrary. You can make up whatever you want, obviously. And then greater than or equal to 8. And after this, take a look. I'm going to say then. So we've seen case, we've seen when. Now we have seen when. We can do a whole calculation right here and decide whether something is greater than or equal to 8 or whatever number it is for you. But after that, you can also do this. If this is true, right, this quantity right here, this is a logical quantity in the sense that it is either true or it is false. Okay? So I'm going to split this over multiple lines. I want to show you how much you can do here. Because this is a true or false quantity right here. This is a true or false quantity. It can work with then and else. This is what I mean. Take a look. Let me split this over multiple lines into nice blocks. All right, so when this is true, this quantity, this is the logical condition that is either true or false, then you can take an action. So for example, perhaps you type yes, and the yes then is saved over into the bonus column. On the other hand, maybe the logical condition right here is not true, maybe it is false. And in that case, you can do else and then no, like that. See? And of course, at the end, because you're using when, then, else, and all of that, and the case, just make sure you terminate all of this as follows. Put end like that to terminate the logic. All right, and after the hire date, put a comma, and then there you go. Now it looks good. So let me push this over a little bit. I want to space it out so everything is clear and easy to read. So remember as follows that the hire date is a regular column. That's it, nothing new there. The bonus is a calculated quantity using case and when. Then you step into this code right here. Then you decide the difference in the dates between today and the hire date. If that is more than 8 or equal to it, then the yes is saved over to the bonus. On the other hand, when this quantity here is not true, in other words, that logical condition fails, it's not true, then the no is saved over to the bonus, you see? All right, now you might ask, do I need the case and the when here? Well, let's take a look for a second. Imagine I try to remove them. That's the best thing that you can do. Just experiment a lot, right? So you learn the best. Endless experimentation. If I try to just remove it like this, and then try to realign the code in some fashion, well, let's see. That doesn't seem to be working very well. Maybe I'll stick in some parentheses, an opening one and a closing one. Well, notice this here, it says incorrect syntax. So we're getting small errors here. So let me restore the original, in other words, okay? But it's still worth trying. You gotta experiment. Always experiment, that's how you push the boundaries of knowledge, right? All right, let me just restore the original. That's it. So this is essentially our view, and we made it so that, for example, we can give controlled access to the employee table, and the person who is given access to the view is able to only use this, you see? And you don't have to worry that someone's going to come along and might screw up your table. Okay, let's save this. So highlighted from top to bottom, execute. Command completed successfully. That's wonderful. Now the next stage here, take a look. Expand the views folder on the left side in the Object Explorer. Make sure you refresh it first. So right click, refresh, and then expand that views folder. And take a look here. It says employee details as a saved view. So it's a saved construct. Okay, let's expand that node. And as you can see, you've got some columns. You've got the hire date and the bonus. That tells you the columns. Now at the next stage, you can just make use of it. Take a look. You can, for example, say stuff like select star from and then employee details instead of the table. All right, so let's take a look. Hit execute and look at the output down below, and it says hire date bonus yes. And then if you scroll through this, most of the bonuses actually are yes, but some of them are no. You see, the person hasn't worked for us long enough or something like that. There you go. So now we have a nice saved construct, and instead of working with the underlying table, we work with this saved construct. Remember, we had the common table expressions, which in a certain sense, if you think about them, are their essential core, right? They're similar, but remember that those vanish. But this is a saved construct, okay? Same thing we had with the table variables, but remember, those again vanish. These are permanent. You can save them, and then you can give people controlled access to your information, to your data through a view. Okay, I'm going to leave it here. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.